The show you're about to hear is a recording from Dr. Miller's webinar series titled Life Meditations. He began this series in response to the pandemic, and his goal has been to provide wisdom, practical tools, and comfort to people during these stressful times. Watch the entire series at drmiller.com/lifemeditations. That's drmiller.com/lifemeditations.
To be insane in a crazy world is really to be sane. But we're having social distancing, we're having lockdown, and among other things, we have to determine what we're doing with our time. So our time is, in a sense, more under our control than usual. In addition, most of us will find that they have more time that they can set aside to meditate or to read or to study, to do the things that they really care about. Let's say those things that take them away from the more superficial, temporal, mundane issues, to tune into something more deeply meaningful to them. And as such, is a spiritual practice. That is spiritual deepening when you're doing that. So simply the lockdown itself sets that situation up for us. Secondly, everything has changed, and it keeps changing. And nobody knows what the news is going to be next week or next month. It's changing, and it's changing in a very unpredictable way. And so the ground underneath us is shifting, and we have to deal with that. And it leads us to say, how are we going to interpret this? What are we going to do about this? So, coronavirus comes up, and for me, and I'm sure for at least some of you, you looked at the statistics and say, hey, this thing could actually kill me. I could stop into a local cafe and have a cup of coffee and come home and have this infection and be dead in a week or two, or, on a assisted breathing in the hospital or something like that. And the percentage that they were telling us of people who were dying, the percentage of us who were dying if we're over 50 or 60, or my God, over 70. And so suddenly we're looking at death. And most of the time we're able to go through our lives and not think about those kinds of things. As some of the wise men have said, that, in our lives, we live our lives as though we're in a kind of drunken trance. We're so locked into doing the things that we do every day that we hardly think. We get up and brush our teeth and eat the breakfast and drive to work or whatever and clock in and begin. We haven't had a single moment to stop and smell the roses or to feel something that's deeply meaningful to us. Then suddenly something like this comes along and we're shocked out of it. And that gives us an opportunity to say we're not there anymore. And instead of, and this is the challenge for a lot of people, of course this produces anxiety. Because our monkey mind, that unconscious part of the mind that lives in your paleo cortex, your paleo-mammalian cortex, the limbic system, it's unconscious. But that's the place that all of our emotions come from. So if we're feeling anxious, or if we're feeling frustrated, or if we're feeling irritated because we're with the same person every day, all day, or whatever it might be, this is this frightened animal that lives within us that is reacting to these things. And the feelings that are there, the emotions that are come up, they're stress emotions, they're emergency emotions, and they're emotions meant to save us from a life or death challenge, and something that's going to happen within the next 15 seconds, or we're dead if we don't respond in the right way. Either we fight, or we run, or play dead, or whatever it might be. And so those are the kind of feelings that come up, but they don't really fit the situation. So, and that part of the brain likes to feel in control. It likes to know where everything is. And when it's not feeling in control, those feelings come up. We're not really ever in control. It's just that we can live in the fantasy that we're in control most of the time, and then we feel happy with that fantasy, but we're not. This kind of shakes us up and reintroduces us to the reality of life, and we start thinking about these things. And this is where we need the techniques of prayer or meditation or deep relaxation, which gives us the ability to use the higher part of our mind to quiet the monkey, to quiet the frightened animal within us, come into the present moment where we're safe. Be at peace in the present moment, and then we can start thinking, the world's different, how do I want to respond to it? Maybe there are some advantages to how the world is now. I mentioned one, you have more time to meditate. You have more time to actually cultivate a relationship with the people that you live with, or even someone who you don't live with, who you begin to communicate with regularly by phone, or maybe once you've ascertained that this person is taking the right precautions, maybe you start having meetings with very, very selected people instead of the mobs of people in phone calls and things that are often going through your life. So this lockdown gives us a chance to ask the Alfie question, what's it all about, Alfie? And while looking at something really, really important like life and death. And so, it's true. The likelihood of my dying in the next 6 months, particularly if I'm going out into the world at all, is significantly higher than it was before. What am I going to do about that? How am I going to deal with that reality? I'm not going to lock myself in and never go out, but then what's the meaning of my life? And am I doing what I want to do? Another old question, if you had just 6 months to live, what would you do with your life? And then once you've answered that, then of course the standard statement that comes back is, well, go out and start doing those things now. So just some of those questions, those aren't answers. But what about the coronavirus as a teacher? Let's talk about what a virus is. Most of us have had smallpox vaccination. That means that we were given a little infection with the varicella, the vaccinia virus. That's why it's called vaccination. Vaccinia, which is cowpox. But if you have cowpox, if you've ever had cowpox, there's a cross immunity with smallpox, which would decimate populations before we had that. So varicella can teach your body how to protect itself from smallpox, from variola. So a viral infection can be instructive. Now, I'm not saying the coronavirus is going to be particularly instructive for individuals, but it may be instructive for our culture and for our society as a whole. That maybe there's a message there. A virus is kind of like a sperm cell in a way. It's got some nuclear material, which is DNA or RNA, which is not alive. These are just chemicals. And around it is wrapped this protein coat. And that protein coat is the vehicle that protects these tender fibrils of DNA or RNA. And it goes through the environment until it comes to a cell that is vulnerable to it. It attaches and it opens up and it gets the information that's inside, goes into the host cell, goes into its nucleus and changes what its nucleus is doing. It changes what the cell is doing. And the cell now begins to produce more viral particles. So what a virus is it's something that comes along and injects information in, and that information is usually, pretty harmful. But as I say, with vaccinia, it's quite useful. But maybe even there's a message here for us as a culture, for us as a society. Maybe we need to look at this system that allowed us, what are we up to? 110,000 people have died, and simply because we weren't prepared. We weren't prepared. It's ridiculous. It's like starting off across the Mojave Desert and not checking to see if your gas tank is full. We simply did not have protective equipment around. We had fired everybody from the pandemic department, along with all of the changes that have happened, shifts in our government. We're not prepared. The hurricane came along, and we weren't prepared for that. Katrina, and look what happened. And one by one, things are happening. Oh my goodness, and we're running around rearranging the deck chairs on the deck of the Titanic here. Maybe there's something we need to learn about all of that. And right now, there's the issue of police brutality that's out there. Well, we're getting to look at that right at the same time that we have all of this time available to us because we're in lockdown. I mean, these things are all connected to each other. And, maybe there's something that we need to do about the rampant police brutality that's out there. Black lives matter. White lives matter too. There's a lot of police who are brutal to a lot of white people, a lot of fantastic policemen. Law enforcement officers, some of the finest people that I've ever met, and absolutely, by and large, beautiful people. And there's a certain segment in that, particularly in certain areas of the country, certain particular police departments where reform is like really important here, that we ought to be paying attention to it. So that can be sort of spiritual growth for our society as a whole. I started out, I didn't have a spiritual life to be desired as a kid. Everything I learned about religion seemed to be negative. I learned about crusades. I learned about inquisitions. I learned about religious wars. In my neighborhood, the Catholics were taught that if they even set foot in a Protestant church, that they were committing a mortal sin and may go to hell for that unless they repented, and a lot of things that simply didn't make sense to my scientific mind. So I didn't pay too much attention to it. But pretty soon, as I got into the work that I was doing, I found something very interesting that would happen. And of course, in the beginning, the kind of work I was doing was primarily working with deep states of hypnosis. And I would see people at that time, many people came in for eating or smoking or breaking this bad habit, gambling, whatever else it might be. And what I found was that people who had a strong religious orientation, they could heal faster and more completely than people who had little spirituality. And people who were total agnostic, I should say total atheist, they would have the most difficult time. And that was very interesting to me because I was a militant agnostic at that time. I say militant agnostic because I loved to have arguments with people who believed in God or this or that, because I would drive them down the rabbit hole into the things about their religion, like gods that had 10 arms, or virgin births, or parting Red Seas, and and pretty soon I felt I was able to win the arguments because I was so smart. Anyway, but here I was, this smart agnostic. I say agnostic because, again, atheists have an awful lot of faith to think that all this can happen by accident. So I'm agnostic. But here were these people who had these deep beliefs. They were changing and their lives were getting better, and I couldn't help those who had weak beliefs or none. I was more limited in what I could do.
This is Dr. Miller reminding you to pause for a moment, relax, and be aware that now is the time to heal ourselves and heal our planet. The time is now.
For more information about Dr. Miller's work, his upcoming events, new programs, and how you can change your mind and change your life, visit his multimedia website at drmiller.com. That's drmiller.com. This webinar series is funded by your donations. Support their ongoing creation by visiting shop.drmiller.com/donate. That's shop.drmiller.com/donate.
The work on learned helplessness is very, very interesting, is that people learn to be helpless. I talk about this a lot. I talk about how our society, how the advertisements that reach us, everyone's out there to convince us that we are in trouble, that we should be anxious, we should be afraid of this political party, we should be afraid if we have dandruff, if we don't have the nicest car, and the solution for this is to buy their product. But the bottom line that's true for all of them is we're not enough as we are. And so many social systems teach us to feel helpless. In many ways, our standard schooling teaches children to be helpless so that they will take orders and be able to work on the assembly line without complaining. But that helplessness then is responsible for so many of our failures in our lives. It sets us up to have illness. It interferes with our relationships. It interferes with our ability to feel joyful and enthusiastic and inspired about this incredible life that we live in. And yet those people who have belief in some kind of inner power, or if they believe there's something outside that can help them, then they're willing to risk believing something that seems hard to believe. Something that if people would come to see me and they would like to stop smoking, but they don't really believe they can stop smoking, but they really believe in the Ten Commandments, or they believe in Moses or Jesus or Buddha. And so I would tap them into their belief system to think about the teachings of their religion. And most religions basically teach the same things. As I say, if you go to the wholesaler, it's all the same. The retailer changes the packaging, and sometimes that's how religion seemed to me. Religion gave us a way to access this other power within ourselves. Rumi, here's someone from the Sufi world, spirituality of the Sufis. Those are the dervish dancing. If you haven't experienced that, they're so wonderful. So I've had the good fortune to go to Turkey and be there and just watch the dancers, and it is so wonderful, the grace and the peace that these people have. And Rumi talks about the divine as God, like a lover in a way. It's so rich and sensual. If you haven't read Rumi, you should. When the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. When I was in medical school, this is one of the things that really actually attracted me to go into medicine, is that when I looked at the embryos of all the different animals that exist, higher animals anyway, you look at their embryos and they go through a stage in embryo where they all look exactly the same. We all start out having gills, just like the fish. But gradually, as we develop further in our embryonic life, the gills disappear. And we as humans, once in embryonic life, had gills. But the gill arches, instead of going on to form gills, they form the mandibular arch. You know, our jaw muscle is one of the gills. The thyroid, your thyroid cartilage, and one of the gills turns into the thyroid cartilage. And that nature had this wonderful way of taking a fundamental pattern and then just modifying it. And I suddenly saw this similarity among all of us. Now, I had been attracted originally to go to study pre-med. I was already a mathematician and physicist in my training. That's what my degree was in. And because I looked in the microscope and I saw microorganisms, these invisible one-celled organisms that were living in the pond water all around me, yet I could never see them, and yet they were alive. And I saw them moving, and I saw them eating, and I saw them mating. And I said, they have life, and I have life. And I felt a connection. And I said, that's interesting. And this was a further bit of guidance along that pathway. And then if we just look at limbs of various animals, the human being, the cat, the whale, and the bat. Now, if you take the time to go in there and count, for instance, the bones, you see the bones in the forearm, you have the radius, and you have the ulna, and then you have the humerus in the upper arm, and then the wrist. If you look down at the wrist, the human has the same bones as the cat, the same as the whale, the same as the bat. They're just shaped differently. And so how fascinating that we're all variations on a theme. And I didn't know it, but I was already becoming a closet spiritualist. Didn't realize it, but that's what it was. Same thing for the brain. The amphibian, even before the amphibian, the reptile, the crocodile, he's got the same set of really starting from the fish up through the frog, through the crocodile, through the monkey, through the chimpanzee. We all have the same brain, except as we go up the level towards higher and higher, what we call higher and higher animals, you suddenly begin to get this neocortex that's on the top of it that gives us the ability to think. And as you can see, we have evolved, and we continue to evolve. Sometimes I think it may be devolution and not evolution. So we have these levels then, is what I began to find in my work. There's a physical level, emotional level, and a mental level. And what happens at the physical level is determined by, if I get back here, if we look at the bottom, at the physical level, your body, there's movement. What does that movement is the glands and muscles. That's the body. The next level up are your emotions. Your emotions, that's your old brain, your paleocortex, that's your monkey brain. And it can learn a little bit more about the world than just the simple reflexes at the bottom. And that old brain uses hormones, and it produces emotions. And those emotions guide the body's behavior. That's what they're for. And there's a higher level of the nervous system, which is the neocortex. And that neocortex, by using neuropeptides, neurochemicals, across the synapses, creating images in your mind, those images affect your emotions. And that's why my work has to do with, number one, taking people into deep relaxation and into the presence. And once they're in the present moment, then they have the flexibility of being able to use their imagination. We then use the imagination to create images that will create healing, that will create joy, that will recreate love, whatever we want to, because that's a higher part of the brain. But for most of us, unfortunately, too much of our lives are being run by the old brain, by the monkey brain. And in my work, what I found was that, well, first of all, since people who believed were people who got better quickly and were able to change their lives in dramatic ways, I suddenly began to have my own religion, and it was belief. I began to believe in belief itself. And of course, the images that are in our mind are the result of that next level up of our thoughts. And you may think of our thoughts, they go quickly through our mind. Click one thing, we think another, we think another, we think another. They're almost like electrostatic states in our minds. And our thoughts are guided by our prefrontal cortex. That's the brain's brain. That's the part of us where our personality lives. And so we can use our thoughts to control our images, and that will affect our emotions, and that produces change and healing in the body. And that's what my work was as a physician. But then, who chooses the thoughts? And this is, I think, where my biggest contribution was, and what I call selective awareness, is we have the ability to intentionally choose our thoughts. But what are we going to choose our thoughts based on? And so there are principles that we can use to choose our thoughts. And those principles come from that next level up, our beliefs, our spiritual level, or let's call it our philosophical level, or what's it all about, Alfie level, or third eye, whatever it might be. So as you develop your beliefs about life, and you can do that through the use of your prefrontal cortex, which has the ability to use wisdom in its choices. And you can wisely choose to adopt a spirituality, a depth of spirituality, a set of philosophical principles that will guide your thoughts. Then it will guide what you think about in the world, and by guiding those thoughts, you will come out with certain images of the world, and those images will produce changes at the emotional level, which will then transform what's going on in your body. And that's really how I got around to saying, okay, we really need to be able to access that spiritual level, even if there's nothing that you particularly believe in. So, for example, one little story I like to tell is about apocryphal story, of course, but it's about these twin young men, and they live in a little Pacific island, and in the town that they live in, there's a banyan tree in the middle of town. You know, the big, beautiful banyan trees with its, limbs going out and roots coming down to the ground everywhere. And people pray to the banyan tree every morning. And one of the brothers, he prays to the banyan tree every day, and he really believes in it. And the other brother says, this is poppycock. That's a tree. It's nothing special. It's like any other. But look. It's nothing special about that. I'm going to waste my time and pray to that tree every morning. So, as it turns out, one day both of the brothers are out walking, but they're walking on two different paths. So they're not in the same place. But as it happens, at the same moment, there are these tigers who roam the land. Both brothers were attacked simultaneously by a tiger. So what happens? The brother who praised the banyan tree sees the tiger coming toward him, and he immediately thinks, "Oh, great banyan tree, give me strength, give me courage, allow me to fight off this beast." And he grabbed the tiger and wrestled the tiger to the tiger runs off and leaves him alone. The other brother sees the tiger coming at him and goes, "Ah, tiger, ah!" And the tiger eats him. So, was it the banyan tree? He believed in it, and that did it. And that's when I began, okay, so I know that belief works. Not that this story is true, but I've seen many stories that are similar to that. And I'm sure you have too. People who've been able to call on their spiritual resources. And those people who lose contact with their spiritual connection, those people, let's say, who go into depression because the loss that they've had was too big for them to encompass, to embrace with the level of spirituality that they were capable of at that point, became very depressed. And you couldn't get them to think positive about anything at all. And maybe someone did come along and bring them some inspiration, right? Inspiration in spirit, to take in spirit, inspires them, and they go on, and you can read their stories all over the web. Just type in "Spirit changed my life," and you see many, many people tell you that's what happened, except that they believe in different things. So I'm not a theologist, so I don't get into that, but to say, okay, this is what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the fact that we have these various levels of our brain, and by using the various levels of our brain, we can bring about changes within our emotions, and then after the changes in our emotions, then we can change our bodies, how we behave, how deeply we can love, among other things. So I went out and I studied the different religions so I could find out, and as I mentioned in the write-up, I found that in every spiritual tradition there were certain truths that came across really so clearly. For instance, in Taoism, the notion of yin and yang, and we see the black and the white, and we say, oh, it's black versus white. I get it. Yeah, it's black against white, because that's how we tend to think about it. But if we look closely, in the middle of the black is a white circle. In the middle of the white is a black circle, which intends to say that in everything is the seed of its apparent opposite. And that things are continually transforming from one into the other, and the wise person travels the middle path between the two of them and establishes balance. And so I learned so much about balance from Taoism and from doing Tai Chi, and learning how to, I guess one of the one Tai Chi teacher, Al Wang, who said something was wonderful to me, said it to a group of people. He said, Dr. Miller does the Tai Chi of life. And that stuck with me. And I've been trying to do that, is to try to have a balanced life in that way. But I was most attracted to Buddhism, which is, I guess, not really a religion so much as it is, I don't know what you can call it, but a way of approaching things. Buddha's basic message is that the source of all suffering is wanting things to be different from how they are. The source of all suffering is wanting things to be different from how they are. That is to say, if you simply accept the world as it is at this moment, there's a wonderful level of peace that comes because you're not frustrated and you're not angry, which means you're not trying to force the world to change. You're not frightened, you're not distressed. You can be at peace. You're not thinking about how it could have been or should have been or would have been or might be. And that's very close to the serenity prayer, to have the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, and the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. In other words, when to accept and when to act to change. And I was especially interested in Zen Buddhism and the degree of acceptance of the moment, what they call the uncarved block. You get so close to the moment that you're just exactly at the moment. Then there's the Zen koan, the one that I remember, I don't know it word for word, but it's something like standing in front of the still smoldering ashes of my house. Now I can see the cherry tree in blossom on the hill beyond. Right. My house is gone, but hey, we got the cherry tree. And then I spoke to Mitsuoki, who was a Buddhist teacher. He was Japanese. He was the head of the religion department at the University of Hawaii. I used to do a lot of work over there. But he had become a Christian, but he was still a Zen Buddhist. I said, how can you be a Zen Buddhist and a Christian? I mean, for the Zen Buddhist, nothing is permanent. All is change. There's no fixed Jesus Christ or Mary, or how do you put the two of them together? And he said, oh no, he said, that's true. All the things you say, that Zen perspective is correct. However, he said, I found in Christianity a kind of love that I could find nowhere in the Oriental religions. And that really impressed me. And so that led me back into Christianity, into, the website I like is called Following Jesus. Following Jesus. Look that one up. Following Jesus, I think .org or .com. Following Jesus. And it is wonderful just looking at the teachings that really seem to have come from this man without the difficult to handle stuff. The stuff in there makes absolute sense. And then there was Mother Teresa's. Someone asked her, is it taking care of the sickest of the sick? People she brings into her little clinics there in Calcutta. Most of them are dead within a week. He said, don't you get depressed? Seeing these people all day, every day. And she said, no. She says, I look in their eyes and I see Jesus. How could I be depressed? So I said, I want what she's having. So that it is possible. These things are possible. And I've seen how these things can change in people. But what you need to be willing to do is to trust in this moment, to relax, to be present in the moment, and to be willing to set aside, put the monkey brain to sleep, and begin to tune into those experiences in your life that may have put you more in touch with your spiritual level. So what I want to do now to finish up today is to do a little meditation, specifically for that purpose, of going to that place of spirit, of inspiration, of spirituality, and I'll cut to the chase on my search through the last 50 years. For me, spirituality is love. Love, which is synonymous with healing and with life. All of them are different words for the same thing in my experience. So part of the spirit that I'm going to ask you to go back to has to do with love. So find yourself a comfortable place where you can sit or lie. Allowing yourself to be aware that at this moment in time, there's no other place that you need to go. There's nothing else that you need to do. There's no problem that you need to solve. And therefore, you can give yourself permission to relax. And for a few moments, become aware of your breathing. As you're breathing in, think to yourself, I'm breathing in. As you breathe out, think to yourself, breathing out. With the next breath in, feel the breathing in, feel the breathing out. Other thoughts that may come along, just let them drift by. Imagine that each breath out is emptying your body of any stress and tension. Imagine that each breath in is breathing in pure relaxation. Let your eyelid muscles relax. Let your eyelids fall closed. Let your eyes roll upward behind your closed eyelids until you're looking toward the back of your forehead. And I do this because you're really looking up at your prefrontal cortex, the brain's brain. And that's what you want to be in charge now. Let go of any thoughts of the past. The past no longer exists. Not even 1 second of the past can exist again. And you can be at peace. You don't have to process it. The future hasn't even happened. And you don't know what that's going to be. But what you do know is that at this moment, there's no other place that you need to go. Nothing you need to do. No problem that you need to solve. Picture the word relax there on the back of your forehead. As you do, let your eyelid muscles relax down to the point they don't want to open. Feel how relaxed they feel by testing them. And let that feeling of relaxation from your eyelids flow throughout all the rest of your body. Through your face and your neck and your shoulders and arms, down to your fingertips. Then take a deep breath in, draw the relaxation from your fingertips up into the center of your chest. And as you let it out, feel relaxation flow throughout the rest of your body. Your chest and your abdomen relaxing. Relaxation flowing all the way down through your legs and your feet. Letting the air do the breathing for you the way it does when you sleep at night. Feel that little spark of energy that starts each new breath in. And greet each new breath in with joy, as if this is your very first breath. And think of that little spark of energy as a spark of life, a spark of light, spark of love. a gift that comes to you at the end of that pause, as you continue to empty your mind with each breath out. Sink down into that pause. And gradually there are fewer and fewer distractions, fewer and fewer thoughts, and more spaces between your thoughts. Let yourself sink deeply into the spaces between your thoughts. Good. And as you sink into those spaces between your thoughts, allow yourself to become aware of some of the blessings in your life right now. Each new breath in is a blessing. Think of the gifts in your life. Think of how safe you are right now. There are many who would give anything to have the safety that you have. Feel grateful for it. Think of those who love you. And think of those that you love. And think about what that love means to you. And allow yourself to feel gratitude for that love. Really grateful, really appreciative. That love is a gift. Something I learned from some great thinker who summarized the teachings of all the prophets of the New Testament. And that was to have a prayer of gratitude. Because if you have the prayer of gratitude, every other prayer comes out of that one. That is the source of all prayers. Allow yourself to go to the deepest place within you that you can reach. And feel the presence of love within you. Feel that spiritual presence. Feel that little spark that starts each new breath in. You don't know where it comes from. And yet no matter how much you relax, you can't stop that little spark from renewing your next breath. Breathing love into you, breathing in life, breathing in light, breathing in healing. And let that light and love and light and spirit flow throughout all your being, throughout every cell of your body. And perhaps you have a sense of the source, the deeper source of these gifts, the source of this love. Allow yourself to be aware of that source. Your spiritual teachings have probably guided you to learn of that source. Feel gratitude to that source. The source of this magnificent body that you have. This beautiful mind that can understand and create and flow with these images. Feel your appreciation for the spirit that moves through all things, that brings the trees to life each spring, that empowers your kitty cat or your puppy, your bird, your fish, that bird who's built a nest in your backyard. Gratitude for that spirit that moves through all things. Feel it in every breath. Good. And know that whatever should happen in the outside world, there is a place that you can return to for peace and comfort. This place. You can quiet your mind and quiet your body. Come back to this place. Think of a word for this place that you're in right now and what you feel. Your own personal word. Feel a place in your body where you feel it most strongly. And then give yourself a physical cue, like squeezing a couple of fingers together as an anchor, to anchor it into your physical body. And that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, when you'd like to be in touch with that spirit within you, with the feeling of that spirit that flows through all things, you can pause for a moment and think this word or this phrase that you've come up with. And become aware of that part of your body where you feel this feeling most strongly. And give yourself that anchor. Squeeze those fingers together, whatever the anchor is for you. Do those three things, and you find your mind and your body become quiet. You feel the spirit, and you know that there's a soul within you. And although you may play many different roles in your life, you are not any of those roles. You are the soul that senses the spirit at the center, the source of love. And feel the reverence within you to something far, far greater than you or me. And your willingness to surrender, to let go, to accept the present moment, knowing that you can always come back to the center any time that you need to. Good. Then now, give yourself permission to begin to return back to the outside world, but very gradually coming back. And enjoy the process of coming back. And that as your eyelids gently open, simply allow yourself to drink in the colors that you see. Drink in the shapes without naming, without identifying, like, how wonderful just to have this work of art. Tune into your body. Notice how good it feels. Remember that you have now a way to return to contact with that spiritual level. Take a deep breath in, and as you let it out, let yourself become aware of how you want to carry this lesson, what you've learned, what you've received from your spiritual level, how you want to carry it forward with you into the rest of the day, or at least into whatever it is that you have to do next. So, thank you so much for being here. And so, until next time, namaste.
This webinar series is funded by your donations. You can support their ongoing creation by visiting shop.drmiller.com/donate. That's shop.drmiller.com/donate. If you'd like to purchase the programs Dr. Miller suggested in this webinar, or if you'd like to browse his 60-plus guided imagery and meditation recordings, visit shop.drmiller.com. That's shop.drmiller.com. We would love your support in getting these webinars to more people. You can do so by sharing drmiller.com/life meditations with your friends, family, clients, and on social media. We thank you for your support sharing Dr. Miller's teachings.